I just don't invest in things I don't understand. I don't need to win every deal. I just need to not lose. So I look at things and I make calculated risks. And I think that's the best anyone's ever going to get in life is how do I get as much information about this thing as I can possibly get? And then you just got to trust your gut and say, this is a calculated risk.
Welcome to Multiple Perspectives. I'm David Lofgren. What happens when childhood adversity becomes the fuel for extraordinary success? Today's guest proves that sometimes our biggest challenges become our greatest strengths. Joining me is Todd Drowlette, a commercial real estate powerhouse and the host of A&E's new reality show, The Real Estate Commission. Todd has closed over 1,700 deals worth more than $2 billion. But Todd's journey started in a 600 square foot house on a dirt road with an alcoholic father and a mother who warned him that they might have to live in their car. By age 11, he was delivering papers in upstate New York's brutal winters, learning lessons about customer service, credit risk, and persistence that would shape his entire career. From becoming the youngest exclusive Starbucks broker in the country at age 22 to earning a spot in Albany Business Review's 40 Under 40, Todd's rapid rise wasn't just about talent. It was about turning early hardship into unstoppable drive. After battling panic attacks for a decade, he's now channeling his experiences into mentoring the next generation through his Titans of Tomorrow program, and starring in A&E's new reality series, The Real Estate Commission. In this conversation, we'll explore how Todd transformed childhood survival instincts into business acumen, why he believes most investors are chasing the wrong markets, and how his contrarian approach to office real estate during COVID has positioned him for massive returns. We'll also dive into his new software platform that's democratizing access to commercial real estate data, and his philosophy on why success requires treating yourself like someone you love. Let's get started. Todd Drowlette, welcome to Multiple Perspectives.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If I have your timeline right, I think you graduated from college in like '03, and then within just a few years, you earned a spot in Albany Business Review's 40 Under 40. That feels like a pretty rapid trajectory from college graduate to, sort of rising business star. I'm wondering if you can just talk about sort of what you think drove your early success as a young broker and entrepreneur.
So I have a couple of answers to that question. Number one, commercial real estate's a very interesting profession that I don't think there's too many others like it. It's a 100% commission-based job, so it's high risk, high reward. But the interesting reason that I think I was able to propel myself quickly, if you're successful at it, at 22, I was the youngest exclusive Starbucks broker in the country. So every deal above probably Kingston up to west to about Syracuse, I was looking for their locations, negotiating their deals, getting paid a percentage of their deal. And when you have big name clients, like in the retail world, I represent from entrepreneurs to household names that everybody would recognize. When you have a desirable tenant, it just creates more business. And being 22, the interesting thing is when you're pitching people office space or shopping centers or retail, you're 22, but you're dealing with vice presidents, presidents, owners of companies. So your sphere of influence at 22, most professions, it takes you 15 years to get high enough up to even get in the room with people having the big boy conversations, so to speak. But in this particular profession, you're 22 and you're dealing with those people, and it's high stakes situations where you're talking about a lot of money. And people who are really successful, if they see the young kid who's a hustler who doesn't necessarily have all the answers, but they're willing to put in the time and just work at it, people will take you under their wings because they're like, oh, you know what? This guy down the road might know more, but this guy reminds me of me when I was that age, and I'm going to give this kid a shot. And I just, I was a nobody from nowhere. I grew up in a small town. Somebody said to me once, they're like, when somebody offers you a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask which seat, just get on the rocket ship. So, and I was somebody who was always willing to work 80 hours a week and just do whatever it took to, to get ahead. So that particular profession helped me. And I just lucked out that I had, like, so being from a small town, there was somebody who hired me to be a resident assistant, which I wanted so I could get full room and, board. And they then took a job in working with the president of the college, who then needed a driver to go to events. I started driving for him like during the week. And then he's like, hey, we have this real estate developer who's looking for a driver on Friday and Saturday nights. Do you want to do that? I'm like, yep. And then I got in with him. I interned for him. And then that opened doors for me because that guy has a very, strong reputation in real estate. He's a big Target Walmart developer. And then, the rest was history. One connection creates the next connection. And if you deliver, you can keep delivering.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of people at 22 would feel really intimidated just standing in the room with someone who's the VP or the CEO or the big real estate developer or the president of the college. Was that something that you just sort of felt like, I'm just going to keep saying yes? Or did you kind of have the guts as a 22-year-old to just step into the room and try and hold your space? What was it?
So I'm going to credit my mother. So I actually just created a program. We ran the first one this summer called Titans of Tomorrow at Siena University, where I graduated from. It was Siena College. It just became Siena University. And essentially what it is it's a 2-day program that we make free for high school kids, where one day they learn to sell under the premise of a lemonade stand, but they can sell anything that costs $200 or less. And they have 4 hours to sell in real life. They get a team and a coach.
Like they're on campus selling?
No, we go on the
from a
community.
stand?
So I reach out to people and say, hey, can kids sell in your parking lot for 4 hours? And they have to look at traffic counts and demographics and who are the tenants in that office building or that shopping center and what are their incomes like? What do I think I should be selling to those people? And then they have to go online and find where can they get that product the cheapest. And they have a $200 budget. And not the team with the most revenue, but the team with the most profit wins. And they're competing for $1,000 prize. We had teams in 4 hours. The least amount of money that any team made was $1,700 in 4 hours of selling like lemonade, chips, soda. It was insane. And then we surprised all the kids with Siena and we gave away every kid an $8,000 scholarship to Siena. And next year, we're going to do it next summer with 250 kids and 50 mentors from the business community. But I went off on a tangent. Part of that camp, we have kids do improv. So when I was very young up in Saranac Lake, New York, where I was born, tiny little town, there was a nun called Sister Carolyn, and she had a summer program that was called Summer Sampler, and you did improv starting at 3 years old. So where most people walk into a room and they're scared of, oh my God, or they do a play, I'm going to forget the line or I have to give a speech. From the time I was 3, it was like, well, here's the story we're going to tell about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and here's how it starts, and here's how it ends. And when somebody says this line, say this line or don't, or say something else, doesn't matter. But it taught you to think on your feet and to listen to people, which is very important, what I do for a living in negotiating. So no, from the time I was 3, it was, I thought, oh, I'm supposed to walk into a room and entertain people or talk to people and interact with them. So because of that, and I did that every summer, in my childhood, then I started, acting, I got into sports and whatever. And I had nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like, what's the worst somebody's going to say? No, or get out of here? Like, okay, well, there's somebody else that I can go talk to and do a deal with. So I credit that, which is why we made it part of our business program, because, I think people's biggest fear is, flying, spiders, I think, in public speaking. So no, I credit my mom. She put us in that program when we were very young. So I just figured, what do I have to lose?
Fascinating. So it sounds like, obviously your mother, Sister Carolyn, and then later on in college, you have these adults who are sort of like taking you under their wing. This becomes a theme that you're extending now as a successful businessman. And this is like a lot of the work that you're doing is in the area at your alma mater. What is it about the place that you're from, the sort of the people that you came up around that makes you want to like continue investing? I know we'll talk about your show in a bit, but you insisted going into the development of your new A&E show that some of it featured the sort of capital area upstate New York. What is it about this area that makes you just want to keep reinvesting?
Well, so Siena, some people call the alumni network at Siena the Siena Mafia. And I always took it for granted. I thought every college people cared about where they went and they helped give internships and whatever. Siena's just an interesting place. Like it was a Franciscan school. I grew up Catholic, but these days I go to church for weddings and funerals. I believe in God
Right.
and the universe, but I don't live it and breathe it. I just try to be a good person and help people. But the friars were very big, between their vow of poverty and whatever. At Siena, they made you take a religion class, but they'd actually tell you to take something on like Islam or Buddhism or whatever. Like they didn't push anything on you. The friars really pushed a sense of community and being a part of a community. Like you go to the school, people hold the doors open for you to almost a ridiculous length where the person might be 200 feet away and you'll hold the door for them. In the
Yeah.
capital region, commercial real estate's a cutthroat business, but residential is 100 times worth. Like commercial real estate, we still are friendly with people, right? It's a friendly competition. Like it isn't, I'm not fighting over every last nickel in the deal. But upstate in general, like coming from a small town, you know, money, like some people look at people and if they don't have money and they look at somebody when they get money and they go, oh, you've changed. And it's like, no, I haven't changed. Your perspective and your expectations of me have changed. I'm the same person. But sometimes people, like when you have money, will go, oh, well, I borrowed that money from you and said I'd pay you back and you didn't charge me any interest, but I can't believe you're really asking for that money back 2 years later, that type of thing. So I just think it's important for me to get back. And I wanted the capital region to be featured because on TV specifically, there's 210 television markets, right? But if you divide those up into real estate markets, that's 210 markets. 10 are major markets, right? So people think, oh, all of real estate happens in New York City or Los Angeles. The truth is, that's 10 of the markets, 200 markets where every other real estate deal happens in the country in what they would call secondary and tertiary markets. I've made a fortune working in those markets. So I've done over 1,700 deals. I've closed $2 billion in deals. I didn't do that in Manhattan with $100 million on one deal. I did that grinding out deals all over the country. And I think it's important for people to see that because most investors are not in New York City or not in LA. And if they're based in New York or LA, a lot of those really sophisticated guys are invested in secondary and tertiary markets all over the country. So it's important for me to see those, for people to see those deals and understand how those deals happen. Because commercial real estate's $1 trillion industry hidden in plain sight.
So it's interesting to me. You say that maybe your introduction to CRE brokerage was through a developer that you met during your time in college. I think there are people who are interested in investing, interested in personal finance that take a long time to get to commercial real estate investing as a potential avenue for investment. I think there are a lot of, especially right now, there are a ton of really flashy stories about other investment vehicles or asset classes or, sort of methodologies. Do you feel like you just sort of lucked into discovering CRE early on in your life? Is this something that inherently was interesting to you? I mean, is this literally just the story of the guy who you were the chauffeur for started telling you stories about how he was making money and you took it from there? Or was there anything else that sort of drew you to that?
So I was always planning on being a lawyer. And then when I met him, I was his personal driver. So I would go to his house and go, oh, there's your Ferrari. There's your 2 Range Rovers. There your whatever. Right. As I've gotten on, it doesn't apply to him. He's very wealthy and successful. But, I laughed. The kid that got famous going like, nice car. What do you do for a living? I'm like, you should say, nice car. Can I see the title? Because if you didn't pay cash for it, okay, you have a Ferrari, so you have a $1,300 a month payment. Doesn't mean you're rich. And I know a lot of people, some of the wealthiest people I know, like Bob Bear, who I mentioned to you before we started recording, he was a billionaire from New Hampshire and he was self-made. He sold a NASCAR track in New Hampshire for I don't remember the number now. I think it was $340 million in cash. But when he negotiated the deal, as the owner of the track, they used to get 20 Suburbans that they could use at the track, right? And then it was Toyota when he sold. I think Toyota was the sponsor. So he said, well, I want to keep my box for 10 years and I want the 10 Toyota RAV4s or whatever they were. he sold the track. The guy was a billionaire, and he and his family literally drove around Toyota RAV4s, and he'd laugh. He thought it was the greatest thing ever because he's like, I don't pay for the gas, I don't pay for the insurance. It was like it made his day to drive a Toyota RAV4 around. It was like he thought it was the greatest thing ever. And Bob
Amazing.
used to always say, he said, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And so many people worry about how they're perceived. And I'm kind of like the millionaire next door. Like I live in a regular house. You know what I mean? I drive a, what do I drive? I drive a Lincoln Navigator, but I only bought that the year that you could depreciate 100% of the car. Right. So I'm like, well, I'm going to give the money to the IRS anyway. So I might as well buy this truck. Otherwise, I'm just a cheap guy inherently because I came from nothing and part of that, poor kid in me. I won't spend more than $35 on a pair of sneakers. So I just have certain things growing up with not much money that have just never left me. And when I was poor, or lower middle class, I guess, if I had to wear jeans from like Walmart or Kmart, I was like mortifying. And like today, I'll buy shoes from, I don't care. It's like, it doesn't define me. I don't care.
It seems like that, I think for a lot of people who grow up with not a lot of money, who end up becoming successful, finding careers where they are making good money, there can be a lot of tension in that. The sort of mindsets that go with scarcity or abundance, the mindsets that go with sort of the fear of what might happen if the next paycheck doesn't come through or whatever. Do you feel like there was a specific time in your life or in your career when you had to sort of like face that tension, sort of look at that and go, ooh, now that my resources are different than how I was raised, I need to like really think about how I can change some of this mindset? Or are you still just sort of living like the floors are still made out of dirt?
No, so I kind of had like a coming to Jesus moment like a couple of years ago. And the weird thing is, I'm not cheap with other people. I'm cheap with myself. So like if my wife wanted something or my niece or my nephew or my brother ever needed something or, a family member, I wouldn't think twice about it. So it's not about the money. It's just for me personally, I'm like, well, do I really need that thing? And I don't know. It's funny. I actually was really struggling. So I had this way before the movie The Bucket List, or before it was ever a thing, when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, which will sound ridiculous, but I made a list of things I wanted to do before I died. And, there was things on it. And one of the things was, it's weird. I always wanted a Rolex, even though I didn't really understand how expensive they were. And I don't even know, like Family Ties, Alex P. Keaton was like somebody I looked up to, like as a kid from the TV show. Him and Mr. T from the A-Team were like my two childhood idols. How that is, I have no idea. But so I always wanted a Rolex. I always wanted a presidential Rolex. Had, poor 11-year-old, 12-year-old me known how expensive that watch was, I probably would have never put it on the list. But I finally bought the watch, like, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. And it was like, it doesn't change my life. It doesn't whatever. But I literally had to wait till COVID happened. And I'm like, oh, right now, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. I'm like, although the asset class is down right now before, everyone got the PPP money. That's when I bought it. I was like, oh, I'm buying this for 10 grand less than it really is. It'll ride back up when the economy gets better. That's how I justified it. But I wish I could give the guy credit. There was a guy who had a poem that I saw on YouTube. Oh, I wish I could remember his name, but he had a line in the poem that said, treat yourself like someone you love. And that just like struck a chord with me. And I'm like, oh man, like I do these things for other people, but I don't even treat myself. I put myself last all the time. It's like a thing. And I'm like, I'm not saying I should put myself first all the time, but it's okay to sometimes put yourself first. And that was at a time when I was struggling with panic attacks and anxiety disorder. And I had, at the worst, I was having 6 full-blown panic attacks a day. And all of a sudden, I was going to show somebody space that I've done literally thousands of times. And my body would react as if someone picked me up by the ankle and was holding me off a 10-story building about to drop me. And then it's like, I always grew up feeling like I was mentally tough. I was captain of my sports teams. My father was an alcoholic. Like, there were certain things growing up that I always felt like I can deal with anything. I can just muscle through it. And then when you feel like that's who you are and that's how you identify, and then you feel like your own brain is just giving out on you, and you're like, am I going insane? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Logically, why am I reacting that way? and, tried different medications that were terrible. Honestly, some of those drugs, the side effects were 10 times worse than the panic attacks, which were terrible. And then over time, I just actually, one of my favorite books, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He wrote a second book that most people have never heard of that's called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. They didn't call it anxiety disorder. They didn't call them panic attacks. But even back when that book was written a very long time ago, so many successful people that are interviewing, it would come up in conversation that they were describing it in different ways without using those words. And they started coming up with like hints and then like breathing exercises. So between like breathing, meditation, but one of the hints from that book that anybody who's listening who has anxiety and doesn't want to talk about it and hasn't, gone to a doctor to, or tried exercising or meditation, whatever, they said, if you think about your brain can't hold two thoughts simultaneously. So it said, if you understand the fact that when you have panic or you have anxiety, it's basically an undeveloped system that's like a fire alarm where your body's trying to tell you something is wrong and get your attention. It doesn't know what's wrong, but it's trying to get your attention. So if you realize that's coming from your subconscious, if you think about that and you understand that your mind cannot hold two thoughts simultaneously. So if I said, think of White House, gray elephant, you can think gray elephant, White House, gray elephant, but you cannot hold those two thoughts at the same time. So when your subconscious is trying to throw panic, and it starts that cycle, if you understand the fact that if you think peace and calm, your brain can't process peace and calm and panicking at the same time, and your conscious will always overrule your subconscious. So if anybody's having issues with anxiety or panic disorders or anything, I struggled with it for 10 years. I'd call it 2 years clean from anxiety, but it's life-changing. It was terrible when I was going through it, and I just muscled it through it and went to work every day because that's who I am. But it was a terrible stint where mixed in with really great things happening in my life. But I strongly recommend you to somebody start with that book or reach out to somebody. If I don't know if you give contact information in the podcast, but if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to give people suggestions. I'm not a therapist, but I'm somebody who lived it and beat it. And anyway, that's
and managed to be wildly successful and productive while doing so, which is very impressive. I mean, it seems like obviously you are well known as a commercial real estate broker and working in that world, but you've also authored several books. You're in the midst of this venture with a new television show. One season that you produced entirely on your own, as far as I can tell, and now this next season about to come out on A&E. I wonder if we can go back to one of your sort of earlier entrepreneurial endeavors.
It feels like a paper question coming.
Sometime early in your life, you had a job as a paper delivery boy, and you wrote a book based on the things that you learned delivering papers. Maybe you can just sort of highlight for us when that happened. Tell us the brief story of when you were doing that, and sort of how those things translated into the life that you're living now.
So, being a newspaper delivery boy at 11, it's the only job you can have at 11. You're a 1099, so you don't work for the newspaper. So that actually created the entrepreneur of Todd Drowlette. And just a couple of the things, so the book is called Everything I Need to Know About Business I Learned on My Paper Route, available on Amazon for my plug. But a lot of the big premises are, so you would basically buy the paper from the newspaper and then you would sell it, right? So I learned, it was $2.70 a week. I was making 10 cents per paper a week profit. The amount of grown adults that would screw an 11-year-old out of $2.70 a week for a newspaper, you could literally see them at home and then be like, they just wouldn't answer the door, like ducking you. It's like, are you kidding me? But I learned from that to not extend credit to people like who are not otherwise qualified. So a lot of times like, well, I don't want to lose the money or the profit, but you know what? If those people aren't going to pay you, that's a bad deal. You're better off not having them and go finding new customers than letting people get behind, because people who get behind rarely catch up. So I learned that lesson very early on. I learned hard work. You know what I mean? So I was born in Saranac Lake and I grew up in Malone, which those two places are on the national news about 10 times a year as the coldest place in America. So I delivered 363 days a year. And yeah, we only got 2 days off, and I was up at 5 a.m. every day. I'm 5'8". I like to tell people I would have been 6'5", but because I only got 5 hours of sleep a night, in my developmental years for 6 years, that's why my body didn't have time to grow. But I just learned that. I learned you got to get in front of customers. The customers who where I they weren't prepaid customers that just sent the money into the paper. If I had to go collect, those people, most of them, if they saw you in person and they didn't weren't the ones who ducked you, they would give me like $1 tip a week, which was good money back then. And when I was 11, I had a subscription to Money Magazine, and when I was 11, yeah. And I used to, where any of this came from, I have no idea because no one in my family was in business. Like my mom was a teacher. Like none of it makes any sense, but they told me legitimately when I was young and they asked me what I wanted for my birthday, like almost as early as I could speak, I'd say money. Like it was the craziest thing. I don't know where it came from, but yeah, I just learned the importance of customer service, the fact that I always had the paper delivered early. I delivered through snowstorms, through ice storms. Um, if someone didn't get the paper, I would bring the paper and, bring it back that afternoon if it blew away or something happened. And I learned you have to be in front of the customer because the customers who saw you and related to you and knew you would give much better tips and they felt like they understood you. And after 6 years of doing that, I wrote a letter to everyone and announced I was retiring from the newspaper business. And I got probably 20 like letters, handwritten letters from customers, saying that they appreciate it and thank you and got, like final tips. But what's crazy was when I was 11, it must have been like, I was born in 1981. So what's that, around 1990, no, 1990-ish, 92, somewhere in there. And my math's not my strong point, but I was making $3,500 a year at 11 and I was investing it in mutual funds. And I was making on average of 18% a year, which I thought was normal. So by the time I graduated high school, I had $30,000 that I'd saved between investing um, and from my real estate money and side jobs and different things. I bought my first Rolex when I was 20. But I'm so cheap. I started a Rolex fund and I had a big jar. So I would take on like I tutored veterans for money because the VA would pay for me to tutor them. I would take extra jobs. I'd mow lawns, and I had this jar, and I called it the Rolex Fund. It took me a year, but I wouldn't spend any of my invested money because I thought it was too ridiculous. Even though that watch, and then I convinced a bachelor who was a teacher who lived down the street from me, Jim Denisha, awesome guy. He never had kids, never got married, but I convinced him to also buy a Rolex because I knew he could afford it. And because I knew we could go negotiate. So he's like, okay, you tell me when you have the money saved up. And so then I went and negotiated with jewelers and beat him up like $1,000 on the watch because they said we're going to buy two of them at the same time. So I learned a lot from the paper route.
Wow. Wow. I'm wondering, so you also had a short stint as a tech entrepreneur with a company that you co-founded that was essentially like a Craigslist competitor, right?
So I've done it twice and I'm doing it a third time. So, well, yeah. So we had a Craigslist competitor. Bad timing. It had an even worse. So I had a company called betbomb.com. It was basically social sports betting. But it was right in the time with when FanDuel and DraftKings were like fighting with each other. I lost $500,000 on that business. We were up to 55,000 users in 7 months. We were less than a week away from being profitable. And then that's when the New York Attorney General went after DraftKings and gave him like a cease and desist. And then there was some backdoor deal where all of a sudden then they were issuing a license and DraftKings and FanDuel were merging. I guess I can't say backdoor deal, but there was probably about 20 or 30 companies, allegedly, I'll say. There's 20 or 30 companies like mine that basically got put out of business overnight. And we were literally a week from making millions, but you got to take your hits. So I have another company we're launching that's called the Real Estate Commission, the same name as the TV show on A&E. And that is basically commercial real estate software that you can run demographic reports, you can host properties, you can look up properties, you can find traffic counts, you can look up property records. But we're kind of doing what Planet Fitness did 15 years ago to the fitness industry. We're making a very inexpensive pricing model where everyone can afford to use it, not thousands of dollars a month, not hundreds of dollars a month. It's tens of dollars a month. So we're launching that with the airing of the show beginning October 12th. It's never left me, but I've learned to stick to real estate. So the TV show is about real estate. The software is about real estate. I've always succeeded at real estate. The other stuff, different reasons out of your control. You take some hits, you learn some stuff. But luckily for me, I was always successful in real estate, and I was never gambling with money I couldn't afford to lose.
So I'm curious, if the purpose of this new platform is to give sort of very inexpensive access to the data side of commercial real estate to folks, who's the target audience there? I would imagine that if you're a professional CRE broker, that you've got access to databases, the sort of large data brokers, the CoStars and such. So what's the play here to try and, if we want to use the tech industry term, democratize access to this kind of information? Who do you imagine is going to be using it?
So a theme with me is that I'm a very cheap person, right? So of somebody who had to pay these other software companies a fortune, and I'm like, this is crazy. Number one, property records, mortgages, that's all public information. Traffic counts, public information. So I'm like, how are you charging me this much money to basically go to a primary source that's free, aggregate the data and push it back to me, and you want me to pay you this insane amount of money? And these are my listings. I have to pay you a fortune to give you my pictures and my videos and my information so that people can search through Google and Bing or ChatGPT and find my own data. You're going to sell it back to me. That just inherently never sat right with me, right? Obviously there's costs, but I look at it and think, okay, it's kind of everything. The TV show is kind of a perfect storm. The TV show, it's like $1 trillion industry hidden in plain sight, which is commercial real estate. So people shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars. So I just said, you know what? I don't talk about things, I do things. So I'm going to stop complaining about it, and I'm going to create software that is usable. Like, we have things that other competitors don't have. Like, one thing that I always noticed as a broker, people come to you, put a deal together, and they're like, can you recommend a real estate attorney? Can you recommend an architect, an engineer? There's environmental issues. Can you recommend an environmental scientist or a mediation company? Oh, we're doing construction. Can you give me a contractor? Oh, can you give me a plumber? And there's no good place for that in commercial real estate. So one of the things our site is going to offer is find a professional. And so you can look people up by location, by profession. But the other thing it does is, if I do a deal, I can put it in the system like, okay, it's a completed deal, and it goes into a completed transaction. You can look up brokers and architects or real estate managers or whatever. So if someone's like, oh, this guy does all these Dunkin' Donuts deals. Oh, well, interesting. Let me go on the real estate commission, look that up. Oh yeah, that guy's done 18 Dunkin' Donuts deals. I guess he does represent him. Or this guy paves these parking lots for this particular landlord. So it connects people. So it'll add a level of transparency that's never existed. So you'll be able to look in completed transactions and go, oh, this lawyer worked on that deal. This engineer worked on that deal. This contractor did the fit up for that tenant. This guy snow plows at that location. So it's literally going to give the average person access to all those people. So if people want to go invest in Albany, New York, or Kansas City, Missouri, or Seattle, Washington, but they're not from there, it gives them access, and then you can see people of who does business with who, so you can kind of gut check and go, is this person legit, or is this person putting me on? That's kind of the other reason we did the real estate show. Is so many people, back to something you said earlier, everybody thinks, oh, I want to invest in real estate. People think they have to buy a single family house and flip it, or they got to rent it out, or they have to buy a 2-family. No, you don't. Like, commercial real estate, there's so many different things you can invest in. If you don't like high risk things, people don't understand, like the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the Wendy's, gas stations. There's things called ground leases. A lot of times those, you can own dirt. They rent the dirt from you and they build their own building. You can buy those. They're lower returns, but those are great options for people. Office. I'm a huge proponent of office right now. I got heavy into office during COVID. because I used to read every book I could find, um, about the robber barons, the Andrew Carnegies, the Rockefellers of the world. But I like to read books out of copyright that were written by biographers that were actually interviewing them. And the common theme with all of those guys was that when everybody else panics, that's if you don't panic and you just keep a level head, that's what you invest in. I got heavy into office. When everybody's saying office is dead, I'm like, everything's cyclical. People go, oh, real estate, it's a commodity like everything else. It goes up and it goes down. And a lot of my mentors taught me anytime you can buy a dollar for 50 cents, you buy it. There's no guarantee that a dollar is ever going to be worth $2. But if a dollar can be bought for 50 cents, you make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell. So when everybody's going, oh my God, dump this, because people believe the headlines, I'm grabbing up office buildings in the suburbs because a lot of the inner cities are getting killed for different reasons. But guess what? All those office tenants, they're not all just going home. They're moving to the suburbs. So if you can buy a desirable office in the suburbs, there's a treasure trove of people in the city getting out of the city that want to be in the suburbs. And eventually you're starting to see it more and more. Politicians are starting to realize letting everybody work from home was killing the economy because you put dry cleaners out of business. Gas stations aren't making the same amount of money. You have gas stations, convenience stores, restaurants, their lunch business died. The happy hour business died. So you're very heavily, I have a lot of friends that work in corporate America in the last 5 or 6 weeks. Major corporations are sending company-wide emails going, we're going back to the office starting September, starting January 1st. So it's already been coming back. It's coming back in a big way. Like, I think people who are comfortable working at home, I think in the next 6 months, I think 90% of those people are going to be back in the office for the reasons I just said.
It's interesting because it seems like you're not saying I'm buying into office because I'm a contrarian, period, right? That it's not just sort of whatever the headlines say, I'm going to do the opposite. It sounds like, as you're describing what your approach is here, that you've actually developed a thesis that you can stand behind, that you have an opinion. Maybe that's a contrarian opinion, but you're not rushing into the sort of like downtown core to buy your office space. You're actually looking at suburbs. That's where you think the play is. Can you talk a little bit about just sort of what you do in order to develop the opinions, the sort of takes, the theory that you have that goes into how you're investing?
I have an extreme advantage over a lot of people because I'm a commercial real estate broker by trade. So I'm a broker, I'm an investor, I'm a developer. I see trends before they happen or as they're happening. So where the average investors, they're seeing things in a lag. In real time, I'm watching the real estate managers that are suddenly not so quick to open stores, or they're not so quick to do that relo, or they really need to relo, or they're looking at their office spaces going, can we downsize? So I see trends before they happen is one advantage I have. The second thing I have is I know I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the best looking guy in the room, but I don't need to be any of those things to be successful. I just need to listen to people when they're talking and pay attention to what they're saying. And not only what they're saying, but why they're saying it. When I saw what happened with a lot of downtown office locations, you start looking at things, and then I go to those things where I see how they're failing. And there's still opportunities in those markets as well. You just have to go, okay, so I'm not opposed to downtown markets, but like, I'll give you an example. In downtown Albany, I want to own office buildings that have on-site parking, because in downtown Albany, New York, they can pretend like there's not, but you have a heroin problem, you have homeless problem, you have fake homeless people begging for money problems. So I want to own parking locations with on-site parking or enclosed parking garages. So the people who need to be downtown and aren't going to move, you can steal the people who are walking 5 blocks to their parking because they don't want to get harassed, but they still need to be downtown. So you just need to understand the market and what's happening in that market. And then you had, like, again, a lot of these inner cities, when COVID happened, a couple interesting things happened. A lot of law firms that have been in downtowns forever because they don't want to drive back and forth to court 3 times, 4 times a day. When the courts go, oh, we're actually more efficient allowing everything except trials to happen over Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever. Oh, all of a sudden those attorneys didn't need to be at the courthouse all the time. So law firms that had been downtown for 100 years started moving to the suburbs. But now the politicians are starting to realize that, and now there's courts saying, we're going to start bringing people back. So now you're going to see a modified version where some of those guys who completely left downtowns are going to need some kind of space downtown. But guess what they're going to want? Parking, on-site parking. So I'm no smarter than anyone else. I just pay attention to details because the devil's in the details, as much as I hate cliches, but it's really true. So, and the biggest mistake I think people make is talking to someone successful and thinking just because they're successful that they can answer your question about your business. It's like, well, just because I was successful in office or in doing affordable housing development or doing commercial retail or office brokering, that doesn't mean I know jack about heavy industrial, warehouse spaces in Dallas, Texas. You know what I mean? Or people go, oh, that person's a millionaire. They're rich. Oh, tell me how to do this. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm signing a sign company. I don't know anything about fabricating signs. So the biggest mistake people make is they think just because someone's rich or successful that they're smart or they know what they're doing. And even if you pick the exact same thing, if someone was a successful real estate developer investor 20 years ago and they just own the same portfolio, that doesn't mean they know jack anything about what's happening today. And they might give you terrible advice because if you invest in real estate today, like people were 20 years ago, you're going to lose your shirt. So you got to be very careful who you get advice from, who you listen to. Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt because I'm just a real estate guy that has opinions. I've been successful at my niche, but don't necessarily take a specific thing I'm saying and go, oh, let me just apply that to this unrelated situation and go, Todd said. It's like, it doesn't work like that. But a lot of people want the shortcut. One of my other mentors said, don't learn the tricks of the trade, just learn the trade. And, not to go off on a tangent about Bitcoin or things like that. I personally never invest in Bitcoin. I have friends who made fortunes in it. But I used to say, you're not investing in Bitcoin, you're speculating in Bitcoin. You don't understand it. You don't understand the fundamentals. It's a new thing. People made a fortune. I have friends who made millions in it. I just don't invest in things I don't understand. I don't need to win every deal. I just need to not lose. So I look at things and I make calculated risks. And I think that's the best anyone's ever going to get in life is how do I get as much information about this thing as I can possibly get? And then you just got to trust your gut and say, this is a calculated risk. There's nothing in life that's free. I'm going to make a decision. I'm not going to look back. And, Arnold Schwarzenegger, not that he's a guy I'd quote typically, but he had a great line. He said, if you have a plan B, you don't really have a plan A. He's like, you need to have a plan A1, A2, A3, A4, but you need to go, here's my goal. And no matter what happens, I'm going to constantly adjust, but that's still my goal. People go, I'm going to try this for a year and see what happens, and I'll go do something else. Don't waste your time. If that's your attitude going into it, you're never going to succeed. Oh, that was just a bunch of unsolicited advice nobody asked for.
Yeah, but it included the advice, don't listen to my advice. So
exactly.
We'll let people do with that what they want. I do want to respect your time, and I know we're getting close to the end here, but I do, I feel like we've pointed at a few times now the television show that you're producing. You have one season under your belt already, and now you're about to hit the big time and move to cable. So I feel like we should at least take a moment to discuss how the Real Estate Commission is the name of the television show, how this show started and sort of where it's heading now. So initially this was like a pandemic era. You guys shot it all locally in the capital area, right?
Yep. So I'll tell you a crazy story. So when COVID happened, now people look back and they know, but at the time it happened, it was like, are we going to be out of business for a week or for 5 years? Like nobody had a clue, right? So I said to one of the guys in my office, Brandon, I said, we need to do something to market while we're just sitting here doing nothing. I don't know if we're going to be shut down because at that point, everyone was shut down before they decided real estate agents were, essential workers, which is hilarious, but we were. So I guess glad I didn't go to medical school, but so they said we were essential workers. But in that week where I was just sitting there going, am I just going to be twiddling my thumbs? I work 80 hours a week. What am I going to do? I go, we need to do something to market it. I go, we should do a real estate reality show about commercial real estate. And he's like, what do we know about TV? I go, well, nothing. I go, but the entire world just shut down. I go, so I got to believe we can get top tier people who are otherwise sitting home that might be interested in helping us because what else are they doing? And he's like, he goes, actually, one of my college roommates he's high up at Viacom. He goes, I could reach out to him. I'm like, great, do that. So we reached out to him and he started laughing. He's like, you want to do what? We're like, we want to do a reality show where the premise was, could we take two successful residential brokers and two successful commercial real estate brokers, and could we pick just anyone off the street, and could we turn someone into the next $100 million real estate agent? And so we got two residential brokers, two commercials. Because it was COVID, we couldn't do real deals, right? So we made these competitions that were kind of real like and put people through it. We had almost 1,000 people that auditioned for the show off of a Facebook post. And we averaged, I think, 1.2 or 1.3 million views per episode. And what I'm actually proud about from that was we had 16 people that had no real estate experience. 5 of those people today do between 10 and $20 million in volume, which means they're making between $200 and maybe $400,000 a year. And they had no experience, but they did the show, got into the business, learned, and kind of spread their wings. So that's how it started. Then we went and pitched networks, and I always really wanted to do a show about commercial real estate because it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. Everyone's seen Selling Sunset, but that's all residential real estate.
Yeah. So there's over 100 shows on television about flipping houses, renovating houses, or residential brokerages. Many of them have, models turned real estate agents, which clearly you can see I'm not a model. Our show it's a docuseries. So it follows Titan Commercial Realty Group, me and my agents around different parts of the country doing actual commercial real estate deals with real people. They're real investors, they're real tenants, they're real landlords, they're real sellers, they're real buyers. It's law firms looking to relocate for office. It's a kitchen cabinet company outside of Philadelphia that's, need to decide, do they want more space? Do they want to relocate? So you're kind of seeing business owners and executives. You're seeing the thought process and how people are making the decisions and what they're doing. You're seeing us negotiate the deal. You're watching how it all unfolds and ends up, and it's all real. People can Google after the episodes air and go, oh, yep, Todd really sold that building for this price to those people. Nothing's fake. Nothing's made up. Which is, from a production standpoint, has been a nightmare. So I can see why a lot of shows are kind of formulaic and, done in a certain way. That how they're going to end. Ours was not that at all. I think people will find it. People are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. But it's authentic. It's real. You're going to see how deals are really put together. And what I hope people take away from it is there's all these different types of real estate out there. And whether you're watching somebody lease space or buy space, there are just so many opportunities for the average person to invest in commercial real estate. Or people who don't realize there's an entire profession of commercial real estate brokers who can help you find that warehouse or find that office that understand your market, and they can help you negotiate. There's 1,000 ways you can get screwed in a commercial real estate deal. Like, it takes 2 to 3 years until I would call somebody an expert in commercial real estate. Unlike residential real estate, not to knock it, but people get their license, and then the brokerages will be, welcome our newest real estate expert. I'm like, really? You take out, you get your license, then you're an expert. But so I'm really hoping that people watch it. It airs on A&E beginning October 12th and streaming next day. And I'm very excited about it. I hope people enjoy it. I hope people watch it. But at least whether they like it or hate it, it's an authentic representation of real commercial real estate deals.
Incredible. Well, Todd, I hope that after you're a cable television superstar, you'll come back on Multiple Perspectives and tell us how life is then.
And next time I'll be with my high-def camera and my high-def audio equipment.
I can only imagine. Thanks so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. It's been an awesome conversation.
No, I really appreciate your time. And honestly, if you ever want to have me back, I'm more than happy to come back.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's it for this episode of Multiple Perspectives. But man, what an incredible conversation. Todd's story, it isn't just about real estate success. It feels like it's about the power of embracing discomfort, learning from failure, and never losing sight of where you came from. The kid who once feared living in a car is now creating opportunities for others, building a media empire around an industry that he says is hidden in plain sight. I was struck by Todd's sort of contrarian investment thesis on suburban office real estate. While others were panicking about remote work, he's methodically acquiring properties with on-site parking, targeting displaced downtown tenants who still need proximities to, courts and clients. It's a perfect example of his philosophy. When everyone else is selling, that's when the smart money buys. His systematic approach to market inefficiencies, like identifying demographic shifts before they become obvious, it feels like it offers us a blueprint for any investor who is willing to look beyond the headlines. Todd's vulnerability about his decade-long battle with panic attacks felt equally powerful to me. His discovery that, your conscious mind will always overrule your subconscious isn't just personal wisdom. It feels like something we could apply to business strategy. The same mental discipline that helped him overcome anxiety now drives his ability to see opportunities others miss. His advice to sort of treat yourself like someone you love, it feels like it resonates so far beyond real estate investing. The launch of Todd's new software platform and his show, The Commercial Real Estate Commission, on A&E, represents more than just business expansion. It's Todd's mission to democratize access to commercial real estate knowledge. His Titans of Tomorrow program at Siena University and his willingness to share hard-won lessons demonstrate that true success means lifting others as you climb. You can catch the Real Estate Commission Sundays on A&E throughout the fall and connect with Todd's insights on his various platforms. We'll have links in the show notes. And remember his core message: don't learn the tricks of the trade, learn the trade itself. That's all from Multiple Perspectives this week. I'm David Lofgren. See you next time.